Right now, while you're reading these words, there is a piece of American engineering drifting through the vacuum above your head, spinning silently in the dark. And for 13 years, not a single human being on Earth knew if it was alive or dead. No signal, no heartbeat, no goodbye. One moment it was there, obediently sending its data home across 250,000 miles of empty space. And in the next moment, nothing. Just static where a voice used to be. This is the story of a machine that vanished, a machine that NASA gave up on, buried in mission logs and quietly mourned. And this is the story of what happened when, more than a decade later, a lone amateur astronomer pointed a homemade antenna at the sky and heard something that should not have been possible. Something was still talking. To understand how something gets lost in space, you first have to understand why it was sent up there in the first place. In the year 2000, NASA launched a satellite called IMAGE, the imager for magnetopause to Aurora global exploration. Its job sounds almost poetic for a piece of hardware. It was built to watch the invisible war being fought above our heads every single day, a war between the sun and the earth. You don't feel it, you don't see it, but right now streams of charged particles are slamming into our planet's magnetic field at over 1,000,000 miles per hour. This is the solar wind, and Earth's magnetosphere is the only thing standing between that wind and every unprotected human life below it. IMAGE was designed to photograph this invisible battlefield in ultraviolet light, to actually see the plasma clouds, the radiation belts, the auroras, in a way no satellite ever had before. For 5 years, IMAGE did exactly that. It watched storms erupt on the surface of the sun, then tracked the shock waves as they crossed 93 million miles of space and slammed into our planet's magnetic shield like waves against a harbor wall. It gave scientists their first real, global, moving picture of space weather. The invisible forces that can knock out power grids, blind satellites, and one day threaten astronauts far from home. It was never supposed to last this long. Its mission was designed for 2 years. It gave NASA 5, and then, on December 18, 2005, it simply stopped. Ground control was expecting a routine transmission. Instead, they got nothing. No carrier signal, no telemetry, no confirmation that the satellite had even survived the night. At first, nobody panicked. Satellites go quiet sometimes. A software hiccup, a temporary reboot, an antenna pointed the wrong way for a few hours. Engineers tried again and again. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into silence that refused to break. By 2006, NASA made it official. IMAGE was presumed dead. The leading theory was almost tragic in its simplicity. A critical power transistor inside the spacecraft had likely failed, cutting the flow of electricity to its transmitter. A single point of failure buried deep inside the machine, with no way to repair it and no way to route around it. 500 million miles of successful science, undone by a component smaller than a coin. The mission was formally closed. The team moved on to other projects. Textbooks were written using its data. An IMAGE became a statistic. One more piece of American hardware quietly orbiting a planet that had stopped listening to it. But here's the part nobody was telling you. In January 2018, 12 years after NASA declared the mission over, an amateur astronomer named Scott Tilley was doing something almost nobody else in the world was doing. He was hunting for a completely different, classified military satellite, sweeping frequencies with his own homemade radio equipment from his backyard in British Columbia, Canada. And in the middle of that search, buried in the noise, he found a signal, a rhythmic, structured, clearly artificial signal, coming from an object that, according to public catalogs, should not have been transmitting anything at all. He cross-referenced the orbit. The signature matched. It was IMAGE. Somehow, against every prediction, against 13 years of presumed death, the satellite was still awake, still spinning, still whispering into the void, waiting for someone, anyone, to answer. Think about what that actually means. For 13 years, a NASA spacecraft had potentially been sending data home, and no one on the entire planet had the equipment tuned to hear it. Humanity had built the ears, then simply stopped listening. NASA moved fast. Engineers who had worked the original mission, some of them now near retirement, were pulled back in to try to confirm the signal and re-establish contact using the deep space network. For a brief electric moment, it looked like a resurrection was actually possible. A machine given up for dead, coming back online after a silence longer than some viewers of this video have been alive. Re-establishing full contact with a 13-year-old satellite is not as simple as answering a phone call. The ground software originally used to command IMAGE had been retired, overwritten, lost to old hard drives and obsolete formats. Engineers had to essentially relearn how to speak their own machine's forgotten language. Over the following weeks, NASA confirmed something remarkable. IMAGE was spinning at close to its expected rate, its orbit was stable, and its basic systems appeared to be drawing power. The satellite hadn't just survived, in some limited sense, it had endured. But confirming a heartbeat is not the same as full recovery. Engineers needed to command the spacecraft into a safe operating mode to attempt to download real science data again, and that required precision timing, a working transmitter response, and no small amount of luck. By the following spring, the signal weakened, then dropped out again. This time, engineers believe, for good. Whatever kept Image alive through 13 years of silence had finally, truly failed. But this time, there was no mystery, no open question haunting the mission logs. This time, the spacecraft's team got to say goodbye on their own terms, something denied to almost every other object we've ever lost in space. Here's what makes this story more than a curiosity. It's a window into how fragile and how strangely resilient our machines in space actually are. Spacecraft like Image run on aging batteries, decades-old solar panels, and single points of failure that engineers on Earth can never physically touch again once launch happens. Every satellite orbiting above you right now is essentially placing a bet that its weakest component will outlast its mission. Sometimes that bet fails catastrophically, and sometimes, almost unbelievably, a machine keeps functioning in ways its own creators didn't expect, quietly orbiting a planet that has moved on without it. The prevailing theory for Image's original 2005 blackout, that single failed transistor, was never fully proven, which means the truth is stranger than fiction. We don't actually know with total certainty why the satellite went silent, or why it came back, or what allowed it to survive 13 winters in the merciless swing between solar heat and absolute cold. And that uncertainty is the whole point. In space, dead is not always a permanent word. You might be thinking, this is a satellite from 2005. Why does it matter to someone living their life on Earth in 2026? Because space weather isn't science fiction. The exact phenomenon Image was built to study, solar storms slamming into Earth's magnetic field, is the same force that can and has knocked out power grids. In 1989, a geomagnetic storm blacked out the entire Canadian province of Quebec in 90 seconds. In 1859, the Carrington event, the most powerful solar storm in recorded history, set telegraph wires on fire around the world. If an event of that scale happened today, in a world built entirely on satellites, GPS, and electrical grids, the disruption could cost economies hundreds of billions of dollars. Every mission like Image, every silent, spinning machine watching the sun and the Earth argue in ultraviolet light is part of a quiet, early warning system protecting a civilization that mostly doesn't know it exists. When your phone finds your location, when your lights turn on without a second thought, some small part of that reliability was paid for by machines like this one. Machines that got lost, and machines that, against every expectation, tried to come home. Here's the detail that made engineers who worked on Image describe the discovery as one of the strangest moments of their careers. Scott Tilley wasn't even looking for it. He stumbled onto a resurrected government satellite while hunting for something else entirely, using equipment built in his own home, which raises a genuinely unsettling question, one NASA itself has quietly acknowledged. How many other dead spacecraft are still up there, still transmitting, still waiting? Right now, there are thousands of defunct satellites and derelict probes orbiting Earth or drifting through the solar system, and nobody is actively listening to most of them. Some of them may not be as silent as we assume. Some of them may simply be waiting for the right antenna, pointed at the right patch of sky at the right moment. We built these machines to watch the universe for us, and somewhere out there, tonight, some of them might still be watching, even after we told the world they were gone. There is something quietly humbling about a machine that outlives its own obituary. We build these fragile, brilliant instruments, send them into a void that owes us nothing, and then, sometimes, we simply stop listening before they've finished speaking. Image spent 13 years spinning above a planet that had moved on without it, faithfully holding its post long after everyone assumed the post was empty. And when it was finally heard again, it wasn't NASA's most powerful antenna that found it. It was one person, in a backyard, refusing to accept the silence as the end of the story. Maybe that's the real lesson drifting up there in the dark, that some signals just need someone patient enough and willing enough to listen for them. If this story gave you chills, if you found yourself wondering what else is still quietly transmitting up there in the dark, let us know in the comments. And if you want more true stories from the edge of what we understand about space, make sure you're subscribed, because Infinity Alert is just getting started.